Hey, good morning, Janera. How are you today?
I'm doing great, and yourself?
Wonderful. So I'm so glad you have a few minutes to go over this overview with me. So one of the things I want to talk to you today is about how money works. I think a lot of people would win more at the money game if they kind of knew all the rules. Um, I want you to think about a board game. How quickly do you think you'd win it if you didn't know all the rules and everyone else did? You'd always be in a situation where you'd be playing catch up or basically losing the game, right? So it can be just like that with money as well. So we're going to walk through this presentation here. And I want to start off by giving you some good news. Number one, you can get out of debt, you can build savings, and you can get on the path to financial independence. A lot of people think you have to be born into money, and that is not the case. But you have to behave a certain way, kind of way the way the people who have money behave, to be completely transparent. But it doesn't matter. The point is anybody can do it. All right, so step one is learning to take control. Do you feel in control of your money? Do you feel like you're on top of it? Every I is dotted and every T is crossed? Is that kind of where you're at this moment in your life? Or do you feel like
Um,
some room for improvement?
I feel like there's definitely room for improvement for sure.
Well, congratulations, because three-quarters of the country says that. So you are not alone. I think the thing is, we we have to change the way we think. All right. So these are some of the things I'm going to go over with you today. These are some of the strategies that I'm going to try to drive home to you. And paying yourself first, adjusting your priorities, changing the way you think, maybe adjust your lifestyle a little, avoiding the credit trap, and then setting a goal. Do you know the average person spends more time planning a 2-week vacation than they do their retirement? Did you know that?
No, that's shocking.
Yeah, I know. Because, well, or what I like to say, because we're girls, is I want you to think about planning a wedding. How much time do you think does it take to plan a wedding? You can't do that in a half hour, can you?
Oh no,
It
no.
probably takes, what do you think? Like, what's your guess?
To
There's
plan a
no
whole
wrong answer.
wedding,
Yeah, to plan a wedding, even a simple one. What do you think?
it would take, well,
Couple weeks?
yeah, a couple of weeks if it's something simple like a courthouse wedding, but if it's something bigger than that, probably months,
So, how long does the wedding last?
a day.
Okay. Now, how long is your retirement going to last? So, say you stop working at 65, 67, 70. How many more years do you expect to live after that?
20?
Yeah. So, here you have 20 years of life to plan. How much time do you think you should devote to it? Should be a little bit longer than the wedding, don't you think?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Well, cool. We're on the same page. Okay. So let's look at some of the things you can control versus the things you can't control. So obviously, we cannot control the future of Social Security or your employer, as you know, right now with this being laid off and stuff. We can't control taxes. We can't control inflation. Um, we can't control the rising cost of things. I mean, the fact is, what your parents paid for rent or a mortgage when you were a baby is a totally different number than what we have to pay now if we want to buy a house or live in an apartment. Isn't that true?
Yeah,
Yeah, and
definitely.
that's just inflation. That's not news to you. You've heard of that, right? All right. And then the risk of single investment, which I'll talk to you a little bit about. But here's the things you can control, because I'm kind of a cup is half full versus a cup is half empty type of a girl. You can control saving for retirement. You can control multiple sources of income. You can control ways to reduce your taxes. You can control maximizing your savings. And you can control diversifying your investments. All right, so here's the first step. I always say, if you're in a hole, step one, stop digging. So what is this pay yourself first idea? All right, so a lot of people get paid and they pay their bills for the most part because we're all good, upstanding citizens. And then we live through the month. And if at the end of the month there's anything left over, maybe we put some of it in savings. Usually we get to the end of the month and there's not a lot left over, so we don't even bother. That's kind of, most people are living almost paycheck to paycheck, really tight. So the first idea here that I'm going to present is that you pay yourself first. And that means when you're paying your bills at the beginning of the month, you take something and you pay it to your savings account like it's a bill. And I recommend, even if you start with 25 bucks, it doesn't matter, because doing something is better than doing nothing. Does that make sense? Cool. All right. And also, even if during the course of the month you have to dip into that savings and borrow some of it back to survive the month, that's okay. At least you're trying. That's better than not trying at all. So the next thing I want you to do is think about having 3 kinds of savings. So the middle one is, the first one is an emergency account. And I'm going to talk to you about an emergency account more. Have you heard of an emergency account before? That's where when you have an unforeseen expense, you go to that account.
Yes.
Okay. The next thing is short-term savings. Short-term savings is more for things like, we want to go on a vacation, so we're going to start stockpiling. We want a new living room set. We're going to start putting stuff in short-term savings for an expense that's down the road. It's not critical, but life would be better if we had it, kind of a deal. And then the third bucket is long-term savings or investments. All right, so let's take a look. With the long-term savings and investing, time and consistency. So if even if you're putting $25 a week or $100 a month towards your future, that doesn't sound like a lot of money, but things have a way of adding up over time, plus compound interest. It really does turn out to be something quite remarkable. So let's look at this rule of 72. I know I might have explained this to you once before, but I want to make sure that you understand it. So what is the rule of 72? 72 is a remarkable number. It answers this question. People say, how long until I double my money? And the way you figure that out is you take the interest rate and you divide it into the number 72. So let's look at the first column, the red column. It says 3% interest. Do you see it there? If you had $10,000 in an account that was earning 3% interest, you take 3 and you divide it into 72. It comes up to the number 24. So that means at year 24, you'd have 20,000, and at year 48, you'd have 40,000. And that's about the rate of inflation. So you're kind of keeping pace there with inflation. Now, what if you double the interest and it was 6%? You'd expect to double the money, but no, it's quadrupled if you see at the bottom, because 6 into 72 goes 12 times. So in 12 years, you have 20, 24 years, you have 40, 36 years, you have 80. And then at the same length of time, that 48 years, you have $160,000. That's actually a very reasonable expectation from that same money. All right, now let's go over to the 12%. If you divide 12 into 72, it comes up 6. So that means every 6 years you're doubling your money. So if you had your money saving at 12% interest, then you'd have $2.5 million in 48 years, which is pretty remarkable number. All right, so now remember how I was talking to you about emergency savings account? Okay, so if you put your money in your bank and they're giving you that interest, what do you think the bank does with that money? Does it just sit there?
Probably not.
No. So the bank lends it back to you in the form of a credit card. Aren't most credit cards higher than 12%?
Yes, probably.
Right. So look at the profit margin. They pay us $40,000 for the interest, right? And they earn $2.5 million. Why do you think everybody's in the credit card business? If you go to TJ Maxx, they say, get a credit card today and we'll take 10% off your purchase. Why is a clothing store in the credit card business? And it's not just them. Best Buy, all the stores, the gas stores. I mean, everybody wants to be in the credit card business because look at that profit margin. Most people don't have an emergency savings account. Look what it's costing them to navigate life with a credit card for an emergency. That's a very expensive choice, don't you think? So this is why I want to motivate people to have an emergency savings account. And what's nice about my idea of paying it every month is if you have to use it, Say you have to fix a washing machine. That's an unexpected repair. And we know with little kids, we can't be without a washing machine, right? We would go to the emergency savings account, and then we're already in the practice of paying it back and replenishing it. We already have that pattern in our lives. So if we need it, it's okay. We'll build it back up. That's what we do. That's how we live. And so having that little pattern in your life is really going to be a lifesaver as far as saving you a ton of money in interest on those credit cards. Does that make sense? Okay. So the next thing I want you to do is look at paying off your debt. So when we look at paying off our debt, did you know that if you made a one-time purchase for $3,000 on a credit card, and that could be like a new refrigerator and stove, or a major repair to a car, and the card had 18% interest, it would take you 10 years to pay that off, and you would end up paying $2,000 in interest, which is basically doubling the price of what you bought, if you just made those minimum payments. Because a lot of people, when they go to do something, they think, can I afford the minimum payment? And that's such a bad way to think. That's not the question to ask yourself. The question to ask yourself is, how quickly can I eliminate this debt? So if you actually had to put $3,000 on the card, you should be thinking, I want to give $500 a month, and in 6 or 7 months, zero it out, not stretch it out for 10 years. Should be less than a year, should be less than 6 months. But I do know emergencies happen and we have to sometimes go there, but we should be eliminating all the loose things. So there should be no eating out until the debt's paid, and no, Coach purses or new pairs of shoes or anything that's not critical to survival. Those things should all be kind of put on hold to eliminate this big debt that you just took on that was the emergency. But we don't do that. We think, oh, I'll make the minimum payment and I can go out to eat with my friends. And that's what I was talking about, changing your thinking. Because I don't want you to get trapped in that credit card cycle. So let's look at revolving debt, because one of the things I hear from people when I say, let's look at getting a debt consolidation loan so that you can pay this thing off quickly and efficiently. So here it says $17,000 at 18% interest, paying $595 a month. Will take you 17 years and 2 months to pay it off, and you'll have paid $12,000 in interest. That's the credit card, right? Now, if you got the same a loan, debt consolidation loan, same interest rate, 18%, but fixed, $595 a month, you'd pay off that same debt in 3 years and 2 months. 3 years versus 17 years, $5,000 versus $12,000. Do you see the benefit of, because people say, oh, it's the same thing. No, it's not. Clearly, you see the difference when you look at it this way, right? So this is actually a very responsible, practical thing to do. And then, of course, you have to stop using the cards. You can't just ring them back up again. All right. This is called the debt stacking concept. So here we have a person who has a retail card, probably something like Belk's, a credit card like Visa or MasterCard, a car loan, because we all have to drive, another credit card, who knows what it is, a mortgage. And so every month they shell out $2,720. Okay? So what they want you to do is zero out the first card. And now you're going to take that $220, because it's a small amount of money, and you're going to add it to credit card 2. So instead of sending them the $353, you're sending them the $573 over here. And you'll do that until that card is at zero. Then you'll take that $573 and you'll add it on to the car loan. And so now you're paying this amount of money, and you'll do that till the car is at zero. Then when the car is at zero, you're going to take that $1,124 that you're used to paying out, and you're going to add it on to credit card 1 over here until that's zero. And then when that's zero, you'll add it to the mortgage so that you're paying that on top of your mortgage payment until you are, debt-free. So let's look at this. Without debt stacking, just making, minimum payment or a little bit extra, takes 23 years, you avoid 0% interest, and the interest you've paid is over $200,000, okay? with the debt stacking, and that was a lot of debt. So, I mean, it's 9 years, so it's 14 years sooner. You've avoided $130,000 in interest. And the monthly payments are the same. It's just how you're applying that money. Because a lot of times when people pay things off, then they think, oh, now this is money I can go do nonsense with, as opposed to, no, let's use that money to eliminate the debt. Oh, this is in here twice by accident. Sorry about that. And then I want to bring to your attention common credit mistakes. Not valuing your credit, raising credit card limits, not monitoring your credit card history. And that's really important because a lot of people get subject to credit card fraud. Do you know anybody who's experienced credit card fraud?
Yes.
Is that a fun thing to go through?
No, not at all.
And the thing is, if you catch the person in the very beginning, the first time you start to see something, hey, I didn't buy that. Hey, I didn't do that. I didn't get that credit card. What's this? And you jump right on it, you eliminate a lot. But if you're not looking, they end up getting tons of stuff, maxing everything out. And then by the time you realize it, you're like, oh my God. But if you would have stayed on top of it, like if you checked it monthly or at least every other month, it just takes a few seconds to look at it. I would actually suggest that you put something on your phone, like an alarm, that, you know, like on the first of every month, you just go to Credit Karma, or if you have a credit card that offers you a FICO score, or where you bank offers you some sort of credit information, just make a pattern of, while you're paying your bills, check your credit score. Does everything look normal? Do you recognize everything? Good. Next month, just takes a few seconds. It's a really great pattern to have in your life. Okay. Now, remember what we talked about, time value of money? So I know these numbers are really small, so I'm going to just tell you what they say, and then I will be sending you a printout of this so you can look at it more closely if you're interested. So the first person invests about $5,500 a year. So it's like around $400 or $500 a month is what they're putting in there from age 22 to 29. And then they stop and don't invest in another thing and just let compound interest take it away. The second person starts doing that at age 30 and does it all the way up to age 67. If you go down to the bottom, it says the total contributions of the first person is $44,000 and they have $2 million. If you go over to the second person, the total contribution is $200,000 and they have $1.8 million. That just shows you the power of compound interest and how a lot of young people say, oh, I'll start saving for my retirement when I'm a little bit older. I don't feel like doing it right now. And even a little bit makes a big difference, as you can see, because of the compound interest. Become an owner, not a loaner. So that talks about you using your savings account because you become your own bank. Instead of going to the bank to borrow money, you're borrowing money from your savings account, much more efficient. It talks about instead of paying rent, own a house. And it talks about instead of, paying a car payment, getting rid of it and owning the car, because it frees up all that money in your budget to invest or spend more wisely. Because once you have eliminated all that debt and now you have more of your paycheck available, putting $500 a month aside towards investing is actually a very reasonable thing to do because you don't have all that credit card and car payments to do anymore. And what we want you to think about for your future is a three-legged school. So one is the Social Security, one is any kind of company pension, and if you don't have a company pension because you're a self-employed woman like yourself, I want to partner with you to help create that. And then personal savings. So I don't want you just to save, I want you to invest. Here's some numbers. Standard & Poor, that's with a 10% interest. This is the growth of a $10,000 investment in a 30-year window, it looks like. Or wait, maybe it's 40-year. So it's a 30-year window. $10,000 just invested in something that gives you a 10% return gives you $210,000. And bonds is 63, which is still better. The rate of inflation it's doubled. So I think that it's important to be looking at investing of some of your money. And then if you feel overwhelmed, that's perfect, because most of us don't put transmissions in our car. They don't put roofs on our houses or replace our windows. We call professionals for these things. Work with a professional. It doesn't cost you anything to meet with me. And I would love to talk to you about just starting off something small, but let's just get it going. You can do it. And the best thing you can do is get together and put a simple plan. You'd be amazed at the progress you can make. And then this just shows that, you know, the brokerage that I'm with is Primerica or PFS Investments Incorporated. And I'm going to stop recording now.